here we have an interesting verse that Jack Hyles and Steven Anderson and others will try to make a big deal about. And they'll say that this verse proves that you have to that salvation or damnation only comes from unbelief. John chapter 3, verse 18. Let's look at it. John chapter 3, verse 18. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Okay, so it almost sounds like that's what it's saying, right? That you're condemned because you're not believing. So unbelief is what condemns you. Well, there's a couple things to say here. Number one, yes, unbelief does condemn you because unbelief is a sin, and all sin condemns you. Secondly, though, the reason you need to believe is because of your sins, as we've seen from these other passages and logic. You need to believe to begin with because that's the solution. That's the antivenom, in other words. And so it could also be said that if you don't believe, that unbelief was the cause of your sin, not the ultimate cause, but of your damnation, not the ultimate cause, but certainly a secondary cause of your damnation. I mean, it could be said, well, he died because he wouldn't accept that antivenom. And that's true, but what was the ultimate cause of death? Well, it was the snake bite, of course, the snake venom. But you could still say that it was unbelief that damned the sinner if he refused to accept the antivenom of the gospel. So that's 2 points I'd put right there. Angie says, plus John 3:16 is a famous verse for salvation. Yeah, and I don't have a problem with John 3:16. It's a good verse. It's just not the entire gospel, right? There's more to the Bible there's more to the gospel in the Bible than just John 3:16. But unfortunately, the antinomian's knowledge of the gospel is usually quite shallow, so that it will then fit his lifestyle. It doesn't butt into his lifestyle and mess with his sin. Now, anyway, I'd also like to look at the very next verse here, John chapter 3. We looked at verse 18, which says that he believes not is condemned. Before we look at verse 19, though, I want to stop and look at the word right there. Is he that believeth not is condemned, what? Already. There you have it right there. He's saying the person is already condemned, and the unbelief continues his damnation. He's condemned ultimately for his sins, but also because of his unbelief. So he's already condemned by his sins, and it says it right there in the verse that Jack Hyles and Steven Anderson would take you to. But verse 19 also tells you that this is why he's condemned already. And this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil. So the reason they're condemned already, and therefore they're condemned for their unbelief as well, is because of darkness and evil deeds. That's why the sinner is on his way to hell, because of darkness and evil deeds. Sins, in other words. It's sin that damns the sinner, and it's as well as the sin of unbelief, right? Unbelief is a sin, and it is also the rejection of the antivenom that keeps him damned. It keeps him destined for hell because he refuses to accept the solution, the cure for his sin disease.